Welcome to Conversations About Death, an ongoing dialogue between funeral directors, hospice teams, grief support specialists, and others dedicated to helping families navigate the end-of-life journey. Today we'll be discussing what happens when we don't talk about death. Our guests are Julie Farmer, funeral director and embalmer at Hires Baxley Funeral Services, Sarah Bruley, compliance coordinator and community liaison at Baldwin Brothers Funeral Home, Lisa Bolton, grief counselor and founder of the Dandelion Project, a nonprofit offering grief support for the bereaved and those living with trauma, and your moderator, Nicole Medley, pre-need marketing manager at Baldwin Brothers Funeral Home. Let's get talking.
Hey everyone. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how silence or avoidance around death can leave people feeling unprepared or even overwhelmed. Before we begin, let's dive into getting to know our guests. Julie, would you tell us a little bit about how you came into the industry?
Absolutely. So for 20 years, I was a licensed optician here in Ocala. And I quit my job to stay home and take care of my parents. My dad was diagnosed with a very rare form of leukemia and passed 6 weeks later. Wow. And my mother, who they had been married for 64 years, exactly 1 year later passed. Wow. Within a matter of days of one another. So my husband said to me, can you please go back to work? I need you to go do something. Mm-hmm. I absolutely love what I do. Never in my life would have thought that I would have been in death care. Mm-hmm. But my oldest daughter is in death care as well. And so I think she intrigued me to have an interest in it. So it's been very rewarding.
And it's always good to see women in the field as funeral directors. Historically, that was not the case.
Mm-hmm. My husband seems to think that women have a very special place in the field because they notice the little things.
Yep.
And he said, I think a woman in the prep room gives a balance to what the men tend to miss. And so, yeah.
Very good. Sarah, will you tell us about your role in the death care space?
Sure. I started working for Halifax Health Hospice in Volusia County. I started as a certified nursing assistant, and I ended up managing the volunteer program. At the time, Jim Baldwin, who was one of the founders of Baldwin Brothers Funeral Homes in New Smyrna Beach, he would come in and sit. We used to have a program called No One Dies Alone in hospice, and I think most hospices probably still have that, where if they don't have family, if they don't have loved ones, somebody sits with them round the clock, so that somebody's there at the time of death. And Jim had come in, I called him in, and he sat with this gentleman that was dying, and the gentleman died, and Jim comes in my office in a complete panic. He died. Oh my gosh. And he is completely shook, completely shaken. And I'm like, you're a funeral director. Have you not seen us? He's like, I have never seen anyone die. Mm-hmm. And it was and I was like, it stuck with me for days. And I'm like, and that's a whole nother aspect of the death process that I have that I kind of know what I've seen on TV or read, and I was like, I really think that's something that I would like to learn about, not necessarily doing the care part, but just having a better understanding of how that business works. So ended up doing that, and now I do compliance and community outreach for the Baldwin Brothers locations in Florida.
And Lisa, would you tell us a little bit about your role in the death care space?
I created the Dandelion Project. It is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. It is in memory of my 3 children. My son, who I lost due to complications of the pregnancy in 1989, and in 2015 I lost my 18-year-old stepdaughter to a rare form of autoimmune encephalitis, which brought back that grief. And my daughter and I were going to do the Dandelion Project in memory of her brother and sister. And then I lost her in 2019 to an overdose of heroin that was laced with fentanyl and carfentanil. So again, I had to tweak it. Everything I do in their memory. It's not about me, it's their legacies. I'm here just to be their voice, because every time I tell their story and I help somebody, they help somebody. The goal is to make sure that nobody goes through this alone, especially when they're on this side. And the majority of who I work with are kids who've lost their parents or parents who have lost their kids, but we also work with grandparents. So that's why I do what we do.
That keeps you coming back every day, huh?
Yes, it does. Every day.
And you guys are wonderful too, because you do reach out to those groups that have overdose, suicide kind of
Mental
carry.
health
It's a
issues,
different
yes.
kind of grief, and it's a different kind of isolation.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a stigma, to put it bluntly. And I think that it's wonderful that you guys reach out and give them the space to grieve.
My daughter died 6 years ago. It was 6 years in January. I still get asked, am I embarrassed by her death? Once an addict, always an addict, kind of, when she was struggling, it was, well, you better get ready for the pine box, which is something a mom who's going through that with her child does not need to hear. So I still, after all this time, I still get asked when somebody finds out how she died that isn't in the same boat, that maybe has lost a child to something else. They'll look at me and they're like, aren't you embarrassed? No. My daughter was a 4.0 college graduate. She had a BA in forensic psychology. She was a writer. She was an artist. Her addiction didn't define her. She didn't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to start using today, and in 6 years, I'm going to turn my mother and father's life upside down. Or her brother's the one that found her. That's not what happened. And people need to hear that story. They need to hear that there's no embarrassment, with a miscarriage. You didn't cause it. And even if something you did caused it, it's not your fault. A loss is a loss.
Right.
And it doesn't matter when it happens. And if it's a child, there is no greater loss. I'm sorry. And it doesn't matter what the reason, how old they are. And we need to end that stigma for all of that.
Right. So not only do people not really talk about this and are embarrassed to talk about it, or think that it's not the right thing to talk about it, it's the right thing to get over it, and so
Yes.
therefore they suppress it, right? So not only is that not the norm, but then you also have people who shame other people.
Yeah. I had a person ask, a family member, as a matter of fact, 3 months after my daughter died, they asked my husband, who had lost his daughter 4 years before that, when is Lisa going to move on? And my brother was there, and he's like, she's not moving on. That's her daughter.
It's just a different normal.
And people, that's a constant question. Like DJ died in 1989. They want to know why I'm still grieving him. Because he was my son. And I lost him. And there was, whereas Carrie, I had all these memories, and Quinn, I had these memories. With DJ, I have all the what ifs. What if he had lived? What would he have been? What would he have done? And people don't want to hear that.
Do you think there's a way to normalize that?
I'll let you know if we figure it out.
Right, right.
I think that's what we're all here for, so we can figure out how to make this work.
I'm curious, you know what to do now, and you have the ability to help other people now that you are working in the death care space. But at the time of your parents' passing, you were not prepared, right? And had you talked about this before they got sick? Had you
With
talked
them?
about what you would do?
They did not have a pre-need set up. Do I wish they would have? Absolutely. But they did have a life insurance policy, and they expressed their wishes. So when the time came, my 3 brothers looked at me and said, you're the only girl, you take care of it. So I went in, I sat down with the director. It was boom, 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 and it was out the door. I knew what I wanted. I knew what they wanted. I knew what would make them happy, and that's exactly what I did. And so I don't sell pre-need. I don't have that side of it. I'm not in that side of it. But I tell people all the time, it is so important, because the amount of weight that it takes off of your loved ones left behind it's
Astronomical.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Especially if you have, I think, a larger family, because everybody's got a different opinion on what the best way to do this, that, or the other thing will be. And,
It helps
as a funeral director, you deal with that quite a bit. One thinks burial's better, the other thing, I'm pretty sure she mentioned cremation.
Right.
And it can get really, really nuts. And I was always surprised in hospice how many of my patients who were, right at the end, within, a week maybe, and hadn't really thought about it.
Still hadn't talked about it.
And they'd be asking me all these crazy questions like, what do you know about cremation? How does that work? And I'd be like, I don't know, let's look on YouTube. You don't,
And they've been in there how long?
They knew they were gonna die to be a hospice patient, 6 months or less. They knew it, but it's that I may get better. And you see that a lot. Well, you don't ever wanna take away somebody's hope.
Right.
You never wanna do that, but a lot of people just cannot face it. And it could be for a couple of reasons. Obviously finances, I think, are a huge factor, but then there's some that are just don't care, and like somebody else will figure it out. But then there's just some who really just cannot bear to think about it. And eventually, you'll start to have those conversations. Or if I mention this to my spouse, they'll realize I'm dying and I know I'm dying. It's like once you do that, you've taken away all hope. If you're already sick.
Yeah.
Once I say, I'm just going to call the funeral home and set up an appointment, you waved the flag, you've given up. And that's how I think some people feel and think, which isn't, being on the other side of it, you realize, well, no, it doesn't
Or maybe
mean anything.
they think that I don't want to put that thought burden on my loved ones prior to my death.
Yeah.
But little do they realize that
It's
the
not-
burden
it's the
is
opposite.
much, it's much heavier after, yes.
It's very hard to choose like final clothing for somebody. It's very like, did she really like this dress?
Yeah.
I mean, would she even wear this underwear? You know what I mean? Do I take underwear?
Those are questions. Those are definitely
But
questions.
it's very hard to make those decisions on behalf of people. And even if it's somebody maybe that you're not very close to, like a parent, or another family member there is no one else to make arrangements. And it's a lot of pressure, and would they like this? I don't know, so.
Yeah, so that's a really big deal when you don't talk about it. And of course, when you deal with the unexpected deaths like you have, Lisa, of course you weren't going to have talked about it.
No,
Your children were children.
We had no reason to discuss anything with Quinn. She was only 18. Carrie had heard bits and pieces, with her grandparents. So, she said, joking, she was joking at the time. She said, well, when I go, this is what I want.
But you knew, at least you knew what she
we're
wanted
okay,
then.
well, I guess she was serious, but with Quinn, we didn't know that. So we didn't get a chance to say to her, honey, is this what you want, and we made the decisions. It's not something that you look at your 18-year-old child and be like, so what do you want to happen when you go? It's just not, you're too busy worried about taking the burden off of them. Even though we went through anticipatory grief because we knew that there was always a chance that she could die because of the addiction, I don't think it was ever real until it actually happened. It was always there in the back of your mind, but you brush that thought out. You're like, nope, nothing's going to happen to her. She's going to be fine.
I know for me, as I get older, they're getting closer and closer to my age. And that's,
There's that too.
did that say 52? I'm 52. And I think that's where it starts to really resonate. And then I check, well, I eat pretty healthy. Were they a smoker? You know what I mean? And you really start going off the list. And like that somehow, even when reading obituaries, not living, it's like, oh, well, it looks like they were a smoker and they did this. So, I'm exempt.
Right.
But as I age, I'm the gap's closing. They're not older anymore, so that's
And unfortunately, the older we get, the more we've seen that gap close. Because I'm older than you, so
I know, but it's just started happening.
But this is another thing, the laughter. It's not a joking matter, and it's not something. But laughter is really the best medicine. And if you can remember your loved one joking around and laughing, that's what they would want also. But it's also healing because you're all in it together and you're supporting one another, but you're also having the joy that they would want you to have, if that makes sense. Back when my grandfather died, I think I was 10 years old, so this is back in the early 70s. I have to admit how long ago that was. But because it was so different, and we were a very traditional Roman Catholic family, and Grandma, everybody wore black, and everybody went to the church, and everybody went to the funeral home. We went back to the house, and the kids went off to one place, and the adults went over here, and nobody really talked about Pop. Like, nobody talked about what Pop liked, or how he played the organ, or how he did this, why, and we were shushed. You guys be quiet, we're over here, we're doing this, because it was very,
How did that shape the grief in that situation, that silence and avoidance and, putting everyone in their place?
Counselor,
Yeah.
I'm going to answer that on a grief counselor, because that's something else you learn. You learn about anticipatory grief, you learned about delayed grief, forgotten grievers. So his 6 grandchildren were forgotten grievers, because everybody's attitude was, they're kids, they're young, they'll get over it, which is not true. And I tell people all the time, just because they're young doesn't mean they're going to get over it. Right. They're going to be angry, and they're going to have all kinds of issues because they don't know how to express their grief or their anger the way we do as adults. But looking back at that and thinking, we were kind of left off to the side, and nobody thought like, oh my God, Jerry's grandkids. and nobody wants to explain it, and I was the oldest grandchild. So they were all like, go take care of your cousins.
Things are just a lot different now, and I know I sound like a little lady when I say that, but families are different than they used to be. We have blended families, we have life partners, we're living at a much faster pace where we can reach people across the world via text, and I think it's really changing the funeral industry quite a bit, and how we are recognizing people, things we're paying attention to. I know I'm at the age too where I'm starting to see my classmates and their parents are passing, and also classmates, and you'll see a lot of these flurry of messages with what happened, and I'm always like, are they expecting that somebody's actually going to go on there and be like, well, let me tell you. Some people do, and more power to them, but a lot of people don't. And then, they'll be like, well, I'll private message you. And then it'll be 14. Well, private message me too, because I want to know. And I'm like, what are we doing here? And it's like, and then, so it's kind of taken off, and then you'll hear the inevitable, well, I heard so-and-so passed, but nobody put anything on Facebook.
Yeah.
And did you see his wife? He just died. Did you see she was out at that picnic? I don't think she's even sad. And it's just taken on this really bizarre thing. Like, I'm like, well, what is our obligation, and how do we recognize, people now? And, it's just, I think that like we address it, but we're addressing the wrong things, if that makes sense. And like the wrong aspects of it get attention, like evaluating somebody's grief over a social media post. Like, you can tell.
And everybody grieves differently. So who are you to, and you can't judge people. Who are you to judge what his wife is doing?
Yeah, but that's what we do. We're human.
Yeah, no, it is.
And, and that's okay, but it's just like, I think that, are we talking about what we need to be talking about around these things? Like, are we curious? Obviously the curiosity is there. I know it is, because people call me and ask me the most bizarre questions or message me on Facebook with this crazy stuff. So we're curious, but we're only curious about things, out there, not here. If I see that obituary, I'm like, I'm healthy. I'll live. I'm okay. We kind of self-check. Denial. With every death. We self-check.
Or you want to ask those questions about somebody else's passing on Facebook, but you're not going to go home and talk to your own family about, hey, I saw this on Facebook and I think they died unexpectedly. If y'all were to pass unexpectedly, what would you want?
Well,
people don't do that. And what happens when they don't?
Yeah, it's and I think that people want like immediate, like somebody passes, immediate, it's like, when's the service? I mean, it could be an hour. When's the service? We haven't the family hasn't even come in yet. So obviously having a plan helps, but I also see a lot of services getting lost in the shuffle that just never happen. We got to wait for family to come into town. We have to do this, we have to do that, or we'll do it next summer when we can all get together. And a lot of those never happen, which is also fine if that's what the family chooses, because I do believe funerals are for the living.
And what is it? It might be 62% of all ashes are sitting just up in somebody's closet that nobody ever did anything with.
And the grandkids aren't going to want them. So make a decision.
Yeah.
No one wants to
talk
inherit
about it.
all
Talk
your
about
ancestors.
it, people.
You asked what could happen when you
don't.
Okay.
Right.
So from what I have seen with repressed grief and avoiding the issue is PTSD, health issues, mental health issues, and then you're opening a whole new can of worms, because you're trying to help this person who's grieving, or this child that's grieving, and now the behavior problems are coming out because they can't express themselves. So now we've got a diagnosis for something else, which we don't need because it's grief.
Yeah.
It's because the family's not talking about it for whatever reason, or because they're too young, they'll be fine. And that causes other issues. So, and in adults, it causes, broken heart syndrome is real. We've lost a couple moms in our group to broken heart syndrome, and not just for their kids, but for their spouse or for their parent, or or just back-to-back deaths, and their heart just can't take it anymore. So it can cause mental health issues, behavioral issues, and that's what happens when we don't talk about it. We're social we're social beings.
Right.
We need to support each other. And without that, and without feeling comfortable and having safe places to go to speak, this is the other stuff that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And even a lot of our older people are caregivers. You gotta have a plan. If something happens to me, who's gonna care for my spouse that may currently be dependent on me for care? It's like, it's so important. Not even, forget funeral stuff aside, you know, health-wise, who's gonna take care for the one I'm caring for if something happens to me? It's and a lot of people, you see, it happens a lot where there is no plan, there is no other family immediately around, or even a child that's got some disabilities, or even a child. You know, who's going to be the caregiver? What is the plan here? It's a scary proposition, I think, for a lot of people there. You're just kind of flirting with danger there.
Just
and
so
even
many
not to
sides
have
to
a
this.
concrete plan, but it's always good to just have even a notebook. These are all my accounts. This is what I pay out of them. This is where the money comes from. If this happens, call this person. I mean, it should be so basic that your neighbor can walk in the house, which happens often in Florida,
True.
and say, oh, look, there's that son. That's his name and number. I'm going to give him a call.
True.
But you also have the kids who, let's say, dad survives. Mom was the caregiver, like you were saying. And, you know, they know that dad doesn't want to be in a home, or he doesn't want to be in assisted living. And so now, well, I can't take him. How about you take him? Well, I can't take him. Why don't you take him? And then, well, he doesn't want to go in there, but so what are we going to do with him? And now you're causing another inner turmoil because you're all fighting over who's going to take dad, and nobody's remembering that dad is grieving because mom just died.
Right.
Do you think that there's a lack of information out there?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, as far as what are the options are? I'm like, well, what happens in that case? No, really.
Oh, absolutely.
So dad doesn't want to go to an ALF. Sarah, Jane, and Joe won't take him either. What are the other options?
You know, I think Florida's unique in the respect, like, I live in a neighborhood with a lot of seniors, and a lot of seniors look out for each other and will step in and assist and do things. I mean, I've neighbors that have done funeral arrangements for other neighbors. I mean, there are great people, but unfortunately, another aspect when you have communities like this, it also does draw into a bad element of people that think that'd be an easy person for me to take advantage of. Nobody's around.
Right.
I can do your grocery shopping. I can help write your checks. So you really do have to. It's always good to just have a plan. And even if you don't have anybody, you can talk to, you know, financial planners, you can talk to lawyers, elder law attorneys, you can talk to people that'll put you in touch with some resources that will just help you plan for that. Things never go as they're planned, but it's always good to just know that if something happens, it's going to be okay, or as okay as it can be. It's
Right.
never going to be okay, but it's so important. I can't stress that enough, because we would see that a lot in hospice as well. It's just that avalanche effect. One thing happens and everything just starts falling apart very quickly.
So the more you can talk about any pieces
Yeah, like what's
of
happening?
the puzzle there.
Yeah, do a self-inventory once a year. Figure it out.
Why do you think people don't? I mean, just because
We're all
the
gonna live
reality
forever.
is hard.
Well, again, it's
Uncomfortable.
denial. They
Yeah,
just
it's
don't want
denial.
to, you know, they're invincible. Nothing's going to happen. You know, everything's fine. I'll be fine.
If I think about it, it'll happen. That's common in pre-need. I'm sure
Right.
you've heard that. Well, now that I've written it, it's going to happen.
I've gotten that if it's not
doomed
broke, don't
myself.
fix it.
Well, yeah, and I hear a lot, "Oh, well, you know, we get your advertisements in the mail every week, but now our neighbors pass, so we're going to have to do something." I feel like people need something to make it real for them, and to tell
catalyst.
them
A
that
slap in the
it's
face,
okay.
kind of.
Right, or to tell them it's okay. It does happen to everybody,
Yeah.
and you are better off to be prepared, right? Like they're telling a story of, well, you know, we saw some drama happen over here where they weren't prepared, and we don't want that to happen to us. So first it was, well, they didn't want death to happen to them, but then they didn't want the drama, Of, an unplanned or unprepared death to take over their family.
And especially with like the blended families, you know, it's so important to, a lot of people have life partners now. I don't know any family that doesn't have step in there somewhere, stepchild or whatever. And it's so important that everybody understand, because who you live with, I have a stepmother. She's been in my life a very, very, very long time, but I am not her next of kin.
Right.
If something, and she's all, and we've had that conversation, well, you're in the funeral, you'll take care of it.
I
I
can't.
probably won't, because
Yeah.
I am not your next of kin. You're my next of kin. Are you kidding me? I'm not.
Right.
So you really have to have those kind of conversations as well, because it could be some third cousin, that's how you, if you
Right. What is the
stepchildren are
hierarchy
next
of
thing,
that?
they're like basically strangers.
What would
There
be
is
my
not
next of kin?
your parents.
First?
Your spouse.
Before your spouse, or
No,
your
Oh,
your
I'm sorry.
spouse
I forget.
first.
Okay.
I forget you're married.
Right, right.
your spouse is
Yeah.
Yes.
Spouse is first.
And then your parents.
Then
your
your
parents.
parents. Then
And then
Children
siblings.
over 18.
children over 18.
And
Okay.
then siblings.
Sibling.
Interesting.
And step is like,
Not even
Just
existent.
not even.
you might as well be a stranger on the street, which
Right.
is, if you have a decent relationship with a step family member, it is so hard to conceive, but that's the law.
Right.
I think the other thing that people have a lot of misconception is, oh, well, I have power of attorney.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're not living anymore, so you don't.
Power of attorney completely is gone.
So I
when
could
someone
could
dies.
get a power of attorney to say, oh, I want my step this to be my next
She
kin,
could
but
give
then
me
it's
power
gone.
of attorney over her.
You can come in, wave in your paper.
That's right.
But if she
And
dies,
then she
it's
dies and it's
obsolete.
gone.
It
Doesn't go.
Right.
Whoops.
They're not living anymore, so they don't
That's
need an
right.
attorney.
That's right.
Step aside.
And
Fired.
a lot of people don't realize that, and they think,
Yeah.
oh, well, I had power of attorney. The neighbor who came in to take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they signed over power of attorney to me to make decisions for them with their bank accounts, and I can sign this. And
When
I'm
you were
sorry,
living.
they're
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
And it's non-existent.
You're not living any longer.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow. What can you do?
Make a pre-need.
Yeah.
And hope for the best.
Yeah.
Make a pre-need. Talk about it.
Right. I mean, really, that's the most secure thing I think that you could do. Is
Right.
just a prepaid pre-need plan that
And
it's
then
all taken care of, and
Talking
there's no
about
questions
it
asked.
to know that, when next of kin is called, next of kin knows to call your step something that you really
You just
Or the
have to
person
make it
who
clear, and you
want-
write it down.
yeah.
You write it down everywhere. Like hospice has a document they call 5 Wishes,
Oh,
where you
cool.
write down like, if I should lose the ability to breathe on my own, I do not want a ventilator.
Right.
If I should lose the ability to swallow, I do want a feeding tube. But it also goes into, I would like to die in this kind of environment. I would like to have these people around me. I would like to hear this. I mean, they can get very in depth, and this is something you can type up yourself. There's a bunch of them online, and it really outlines for whomever, this is my
Right.
request. These are the people that are important to me, especially when you have families that are broken, and it may be very important that the ex-wife or the ex-husband has the opportunity to spend time with that person and discuss whatever, and it's very important that things are made clear, so that people have that opportunity, because when people lose the ability to speak for themselves, you're making decisions for them. We have a very hard time accepting suffering. We have a very hard time we're used to everything getting fixed all the time, and it's very hard for us to be told, I'm sorry, nothing, this is it. Nothing, we can't do anything to fix it, where our society has really evolved to fix it, make it better, fix it, make it better, fix it. I'll just get a new one. I'll just throw
Instant
that one away and get a new one.
gratification. Yeah.
So it's very hard for people to give up on anything.
My grandmother was 84 when she had a stroke, and she had a DNR, and she had the living will, and she had all that stuff. Now, I was pregnant with my third child, and at that point, I didn't know a lot about DNRs. I didn't understand. All I knew was, from a selfish point of view, my son was a month away from being born, and I know nothing. She wanted nothing more in this world than to meet her great grandson. And I was like, well, we're not gonna, we can't possibly. I will never pull the plug,
Right.
And I got to the hospital, and I took one look at her in that bed, and I remember turning around and looking at my ex-husband and going, we're going to abide by it. This isn't about us. I'm going to miss her terribly, but I'll share lots of stories with her, with the kids, but it's time. And it was in that moment that I realized how important those things were. And as much as I don't want to talk about it with my father and my mother, to know that they've got all that and I have, access to it, and I know from verbally what they want, that I used to be like, oh, I could never do that. Chris is going to have to do that. I can't do that. But I can.
Your
Because-
natural knee-jerk reaction when someone's going through something, and it, is
Nope.
save him, save him, save him. But do they really want to be saved,
Right.
especially when they're at that point? No, no.
Yeah, working in hospice, it's a well-known phenomenon. Anyone who works hospice will tell you this. There are a lot of patients that pass as soon as their family leaves to go to lunch or dinner.
Yes.
Boom, then they die. Because they just don't, I always said, oh yeah, they know that there was going to be dramatics and they slip out then. I mean, it happened, I mean, I can't, hundreds of times I've seen that happen. And it's pretty interesting. I've always been like, yeah,
That is funny.
They were feeling like they didn't want to die in front of anyone and have that be the memory, or they just wanted to get out when the getting out was good.
Yeah.
Because that family was definitely going to be like, oh my gosh,
I'm sure there are people listening who are like, oh yeah, that's exactly what my mama did, right?
Yeah, it happens a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. When we don't talk about death, it doesn't make it go away. It just makes it harder. Thank you to our guests today for sharing their own experiences and what they've seen and felt. Every time that we talk about death, we make it a little bit easier for somebody else.